Okay, welcome everybody to this afternoon. We've really been looking forward to this presentation for a while. And those of you who know Meryl will know that she has many interests, and I would call her an activist. She's all active in so many issues, but today she's going to talk about her writing journey. But before we start, I just want to put a plug in for U3A Bass Valley. We've got over 60 members now, and the membership, because it's totally voluntary, we can't afford, well, we're not allowed to pay anyone. The membership is over 60, and we rely totally on that income to pay for venue costs and so on. And we started, for $35 a year, you get access to 6 different classes, ranging from Tai Chi, ukulele, book club, games club, digital photography, and also chair yoga at the library every Wednesday at 11:30 to 12:30. And we're also planning our online nutrition classes at the library. So people without the internet can go there and look at the nutrition sessions. Okay, anything else? Marg's not here, our Vice President. She always reminds me of what I forgot to say. But this Learning with Locals program, we realise there are a lot of people in our community with really interesting stories to tell. In fact, everyone has an interesting story to tell. So we've had different people along. After Meryl, our next speaker will be in August, and he is a retired captain of a cargo ship that's often gone through the Strait of Hormuz. So very topical. But today we've got our Meryl. And she has, apparently you started writing when you were 8. She's been writing a long time, haven't you? And if you've read her bio, you will see she's published 21 books. This is the 22nd book, not just poetry, but activity sheets, articles. Help me. Games, books, and so on. So we're very lucky to have Meryl give us the presentation today, so I won't waste any more time. Over to you, Meryl. And I have to put this on you. Just put it like that. That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Apart from welcoming you, I do want to give an acknowledgement of country, please. We acknowledge the Bunyarong people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today. We note that First Nations people never ceded their land, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and recognise their continued connection to country, waterways and community. Now, I want to welcome all you people here. I'm absolutely delighted at the people I'm seeing here. And not only the Leadbetter lifters, we meet here and do our exercises twice a week, so I really feel like jigging around. But anyway, this pile of them are here. But I've even got my friends from AFRA. Thank you, Peter and Brenda and Jan. It is just lovely to see you. One of my hats is chasing reports of rare fauna, and just so you know, this area is the magic area for sightings. It's got very built up now, but in the 1980s, we were getting creatures that looked like Tassie tigers, the odd one coming around, the odd big cat. Anyway, if you read the book, you'll see my sighting. I've only ever had one sighting in about 40 years of chasing these creatures. I've only ever had one sighting myself, and it wasn't the usual big cat. You can read the book and you can find out what you think I saw. It was nothing I've ever seen before. Okay, I'm welcoming relatives, friends, and is Steve here, please? Is Steve, Collingwood Harrier? He was coming all the way from Whittlesea, but looks like he hasn't made it yet. He might not. I think he will make it. He's one of those people who gets to everything. Okay, I was going we're dividing this show into two parts. I'll be talking about my writing journey, and then we'll be culminating in the launch of Unbreakable Bond. Okay, next please, David. We're very pleased to have David here as the person who pushes the button, so I don't have to do that as well. And we're very lucky to have Barry McCulloch up the back doing the video. Thank you, Barry. Right, well, these are the areas I've written in. I started on small things first, but anyway, I write fiction for adults, children, non-fiction, lots of travel, a bit of education, lots of environment, quite a few rare fauna sighting articles. You might have seen some in the Sentinel Times, reviews, lots of reviews, and other bits and pieces. Poetry, I've probably done, I've had probably a couple of hundred published, and I shouldn't publish a book as big as that in poetry. It should only be half that thickness, but I started at the start of COVID, and then I got accepted with my first novel, so I thought I've got to concentrate on promoting that. So the puzzle poems grew and grew, so I've put them all together just so that I've got it done before I die. So sorry about that, you got a double banger for one lot. Okay. Puzzles, I've probably done thousands in my time. If you're young enough to have gone to school in the 80s, 90s, you've probably done some of my puzzles in the school paper. Pursuit, Challenge and Explore, did you ever do those? Okay, I had stacks. Cartoons and comic strips. I'm not an artist, but I was fascinated. I wanted to put some of my little paragraphs that I used to write for New Idea and stuff, I wanted to put them as a cartoon, so I've probably done about 15 of those in my time, but they take too long and they tear my eyeballs out, so I've given up. Okay, I've counted how many I was published in once. This is small stuff, and it got up to 150, and I think I might have counted when I got up to about 170. I've given up, but it's probably closer to 200 now. Most of them are print, some more recent ones are digital. I've had some stories and poems broadcast by the ABC and other radio stations. I'll show you these a bit more detail, some of them, but one of the best days of my life was this one, where TV picked up my children's story. Pity my son's not here, he was 4, it was based on something that happened in those days. Okay, next, thanks David. These are the 4 puzzle books. Now, this mightn't look much. Some of you might know Elizabeth Honey, who's now a famous illustrator author. When she did this book, she did the pictures for me. It was probably one of her first books. I met her and we sat with the editor in a room, and she was about 26, and I suppose I was about 38, I think, when that was published. But this, you won't believe it, they ran a run of 100,000 copies. And I just didn't realise, I knew it was big, but I didn't know how big. I mean, you're lucky to get 1,000 copies of a novel done. Anyway, that went into 2 printings, and the second printing went to Canada, but this one also went to New Zealand. The second one didn't do quite as well, it might have been 80,000, and that went to New Zealand. Somebody else, when these rights reverted to me after 5 years, Eldorado picked it up. They've still got Elizabeth Honey's stuff inside, but they had to get a new cover. Same with their second one. They were selling that in newsagents, and the publisher's idea was that he'd keep publishing my puzzle books every 2 months, but it didn't take up enough for him to make enough money, and he didn't do anything past the second one. Later on, I'm going to talk about the challenges and your opportunities. You've got to grab your opportunities when you see them, because, you know, you never know when you're going to get them again. So if you don't feed an editor or a publisher when he wants your stuff, just dies. Okay, now these are done by Ashton Scholastic, which is now Scholastic, and they did 4 books for me. Now, primary pupils bought them through their book clubs. I didn't have to do a thing for these. Ashton and me did it all, and they just walked off the shelves. If I handed this to anybody, I gave some to adults as a present, and they'd get the pencil out immediately, and I'd say, well, you know, that's a present for you, you know. Anyway, they wanted to do them themselves, and I had these ones for my senior kids in secondary college. It didn't matter what age they were, they just loved doing them. The older kids might do them quicker than the younger kids, but, I had grandkids. They tested some of my early books for me. I'll show you those when I get to them. And they would cart them around with them to bed, and have them on their bed head, and then they'd pick them up the next morning. So I was never in any doubt about my puzzle books. I didn't know it was my lead better lifters who let me know that they liked the novel. I had no idea about my novel. I was very windy about my novel. And somebody, not in this room, but somebody said, oh, the sexual tension was unbearable. I didn't know there was any sex in it, but apparently it was for this person. So I thought, oh yes, and when I read it again, I thought, oh, I guess you could call that sexual tension. Okay, right. Better keep to the script a bit, or I promised I wouldn't talk anecdotes, and I've already told you about 2. Okay, the Blackline Masters. This is where being a school teacher helped, because I loved grammar. And one day when I was teaching at Knox Tech, I went into our little library and I found a book like this. And it had all these puzzles in it. And it was American, with American spelling. And I thought, oh, I could easily do that, because I'd been doing them since I was at school. I'd been teaching myself to do puzzles since I was at school. So I made up my own, and I'll tell you the story of that a bit later, because I don't want to get out of order. But that's my very first one. Later on, I republished it because people kept asking me for it, and the fellow who did this only did 1,000 copies, so I did another 1,000 for that. This book is that Longman Cheshire did that. Macmillan did this, and this has been one of my most successful books ever. I'm still making money on this book that came out in 1990, because it's still in the schools and they're still paying me educational lending rights on it because it is so popular in the schools. I've had another crowd publish it under a different name and updated, because it's got things like Cricketers of Australia, so I redid that so that I had a few more recent ones. Right, Puzzling Cats. For some reason this didn't go so well, but it's another Macmillan one. Play with Words is virtually the same as Puzzle Ways, only different lot of puzzles. They were all done by Macmillan. And then a WA publisher picked up Pets to Puzzle and Puzzles Ahoy. So they're all themed puzzles. And I just used to love doing puzzles. Later on, this is the repeat of Puzzle Australia, only it's called, the first one was called Puzzling Round Australia. This one's Puzzle Australia, and different person doing the artwork. These are the ones my grandkids did, and Matthew's sitting here. He did the grade 5, 6 for me, proofread it, and told me if there was anything they didn't like in it. I was a very indulgent grandmother. I decided I had to put the kids' names in there. I had to put all my own kids' names in there. So no one else will know, but that's a little bit of indulgence you can do when you're... I didn't put that up because later on I say the rewards of being a writer. Okay, so this is Puzzle 1, Puzzle 3, 4. This is the one she's not here today, but she just didn't take it out of her. So, in fact, this fellow sitting here, Bailey, I'll introduce him to you later. He carried when I gave them to him, a couple of generations down the track, and we went to a restaurant for lunch once, and he brought that with him so he could do it if he got bored over lunch. You won't remember, Bailey, but you did. Okay, showing you all that. This one is probably my most prestigious book. And it's faded to glory because it's been around Australia so many times. There's a photo of it later, I'll show you. But Kangaroo Press advertised they wanted Australiana, and I'd been getting articles on our trips around Australia published in The Age at the time. So I put them together, and this is where I'm saying later, you've got to be proactive. I went and wrote to Kangaroo Press, and I found out the editor publisher used to work for Collins, which was pretty high up publisher at the time, and he just said, give me a book on it. So I took all the articles I'd ever written for The Sun and wherever else, and I adjusted them to fit under headings. And he was an excellent editor. He just put it in. The only thing is he made us take black and white photos, and it was an era of colour photos, and we had to put a black and white film in the camera. Oh, that really hurt. And there are a couple of pages. They did put in I can't even find them, but they did put in pages like that, so I was pleased to see that. Now, this book was $26.95. This is in 1987, I think. And it went like mad. They ended up getting 3,000 sold to a book club. The only thing is with the book club, they don't give you much money at all. I got about 20 cents a book. Wow. Shocking. But it brought down the unit price, otherwise this would have been a dearer book than $26.95. Okay. So, I'll tell you another story about that when we get to it. The picture story book. Now, somebody readjusted my pile of books. Where is she? I'll get her after. She's having flipped through my books. They're not in quite the right order. This is a beautiful book that was put out, but originally accepted by Golden Press. And that's the one that was read on telly, but I'll tell you about that when I get to that. 3 poetry collections. First one was that one. This is one I edited. I'm in it, but I'm one of about 5 writers. I'm one of about 8 in that, but I didn't edit that. Someone else did. This is the current one, and I did that myself. It is a bit hard to get poetry published. This one, it mightn't look much, but it's by Ginninderra Press, and it's a collection of some of my best environmental poems. And if you can, the funny thing is the guy who started has died, and the people who have taken it over, I'm not quite sure what's going on, but I haven't seen any of their work like this. But it's very simply done, but if you can get published with Ginninderra Press, you're doing okay. I haven't managed to get a book with them before the poor guy died and his wife. Right. The novel, some of you know about the novel, only it's buried. And the beauty of doing it yourself is you've got more control. See, I don't know if you can see there, but there's a lady and a man lying on the beach. They look as though they've just come from church and had a lie down on the beach, right? They said all I had to do was say the sort of thing I'd like on the cover, and I said, well, I would like Broome, because it's set in Broome. I'd like the Cable Beach, so they've given me that. But I said that they were wearing jeans or shorts, and she was wearing a dress once, and I did mention that she had a dress. I probably didn't say once, which I should have been. That was when she was going to a dance, Mardi Gras dance, so we missed out on that. Okay. Right, next please, David. Right, that's your Outback Australia. The cover's actually a deep royal blue. It faded on the copy I showed you to a sort of a turquoise. Next, thanks. That's a selection of the books that I've just shown you. They'll be here if you want to look more closely at them later. Thank you. Right, well, I mentioned started in primary school, or Pam's already said, yeah. Started off with my parents loved read, or my dad read The Age, Mum read the Australian Journal, and some humour thing that I used to devour as well. By the time I got to secondary school, I was contributing to the school paper. I made up my own crosswords and had them published. By Form 5, I got voted in as sub-editor. Right, thanks. All right, when it came to the career, I always wanted to be a teacher, but I wanted to be a writer. How do you do both? It was very, very hard. Went to vocational guidance, they told me I could do either. But I did want to go to uni, but I wanted to be a primary teacher, and in those days you didn't go to uni. So I was determined to go to uni because my dad had had a very rough life, and he had wanted to be a civil engineer and had to leave school as soon as he turned, I think it was 14. So to make him happy and to make myself happy, I wanted to go into uni. I also wanted to get married and have a family. So because the government awarded bursaries to students, I decided, well, maybe I'll become a teacher, and I got it on a copy here, but not here. I would do the writing just as a hobby. Okay, so I did my Bachelor of Arts and Diploma of Education, became a secondary teacher. Nobody here that I've taught, I don't think. I might have taught, I taught Glenda's daughter. She was a lovely student. Thank you. You can tell her I said it publicly. I don't think there's anybody else. Oh, Barb Oates, yes, I've taught your son, and I think, yeah, I taught your son. I'm trying to think if I taught your daughter. Yeah, I think I did. I've taught 2,000 kids, I worked out. Okay, next, thank you. I wrote letters to editors, pars for magazines, short stories for magazines, anthologies, and I did write a first novel, but it's never been published, and unless I do an awful lot of work on it, it never will be. But I've written about 6 since, and I've had 3 accepted, but by the editor, but not by the publisher, just the first one. And that, I reckon I hadn't sold enough. I'll get onto that when I talk about the challenges of having to promote your own work. You're expected to put up thousands and thousands of dollars to promote your own work. Okay. This one, I was reading the Age one, so I decided I could make up stuff that equaled some of the stuff in the Age. So that's when I really got started on the crosswords and sent them to Explore Challenge and Pursuit. And they loved them. They said, oh, we get them from somebody else, but they're a bit obtuse. So I looked up the dictionary to see exactly what was meant about a crossword being obtuse. And apparently they were hard for the kids to get out. So if anybody ever... look, I have worked out, it's taken a while, but I talk simple language. I might talk a lot, but it's simple language, okay? So the puzzles they can do, the novels they can read. I used to write very convoluted phrases and clauses and whatever, but I was taught by Wild Rose Press to write in a simple language, okay? Got a job as a part-time correspondent for Eastern Post Gazette in Ringwood, and then I ended up taking over, what was the name of the one in Michelle? Knox. They had Knox Sherbrooke Gazette and Knox Sherbrooke News. So I ended up writing for them, and told you about the travel articles. If you ever read Caravan World, Royal Auto took my very first travel article. It was called something like A Long Service Dream Becomes Reality. In 1970 we went on our first trip round Australia, and that was not the done thing. The school even got us, Hartley and me, to turn up to a slide night to tell them about our trip into deepest, darkest Australia. You know, there's still even a bit of Highway 1 still wasn't bitumened. But anyway, ended up with that travel book. Next, please. I like doing fancy things like that. So that was my specialty, and that was something that the school papers liked and what the puzzle books I did liked. That was in Going Our Way, Bus Australia. Thanks, David. Now, some of you, I understand, want to be writers, and some of you probably already are writers. Jen Rutherford's already a writer, for one. Okay, you've got to have life experience. When I first started, I used to think, you know, I want to write about death, I want to write about marriage, and I didn't know enough to write about it. And as you get older, you've got more depth to it. But there is something about writing in the immediate, and it took me a while before I even wrote up the birth of my first child, Michael, who had to pull out because he's got a bad cold today. If you write about it at the time, there is this immediacy. So whatever stage of your life you are, have a think about what's interesting in your life if you want to write something, and see how you go. Okay, your inspiration, where does it come from? Well, it's something you hear, touch, smell, taste, dream, imagine, or it's a story someone tells you. There are people in this room who have inspired some of the stories in the book or the poems in the book, because I go home and I can't get a story out of my mind. There's one story we usually stand in a circle here doing our strength training, and one of the poems in the book, I wasn't present, I was offered a medical appointment, but somebody who usually sits over there, she told me the story, so I've written it up. A bolt of lightning came through during an electrical storm. It landed in the middle of the room, it lit up the room and it went out that door. So when you read Lightning Visit, that happened to my strength training class in 2009. And if you know Kath Wood, she told me the story. Okay? Another one is the what if. If you say to yourself, what if something happened? When I was teaching, all the English classes taught the same subject at Knox Tech, or same themes. And I was told I had to teach year 10 kids to, what if I was given 6 months to live? And I thought, how shocking. Fancy asking, 15-year-old kids to write about that. Another one was to write about pain, and I thought, fancy asking, 15-year-old kids. I got some of the best writings I've ever had. One was if my hair turned green. That was a very funny one. But anyway, have a think about what if I met someone who was awful and whatever. Somebody told me about my Broom book. That's about a fellow who loses his memory and he doesn't know why. He's fearful of things. He feels there's danger out there and stuff like that. Well, if you can make up stuff like that, try and have a think. We had somebody, Huntley and I, when we were going together, we were coming home from the beach one evening, and the car in front of us in Brighton slowed down and a woman jumped out. And she was a middle-aged woman and she was dressed like the Russian spy who they took off the plane at Darwin. And he and his wife, he got out after and he's in a big coat and he's got his hat on and he's going out, come back. And she's running like mad type. She's got her hat on and her tight suit on that was the fashion and she's tottering along on her high. That haunted me for 3 years, that story, because I couldn't work out. We sat there in the car waiting for this woman to come back if she wanted help. He eventually got her to come back and get in the car with him. We took the number plate and whatever. We were ready to go take her to the police or whatever she wanted. But anyway, he just yelled out in a very deep Russian-type voice, it's only a domestic. And I thought, oh dear, But we were very worried for it. I finally worked out a story and I wrote a story up on that. But I was never happy with the story until one day, about 3 years later, I changed it from she to I and I made me the woman. And I think it's one of my most successful stories. But this is what goes on in the head of a writer. So if you reckon you're a writer and you get a story in you, one of the reasons I write poems as well is because I often don't know the whole story and I can't think of a story. So I just write the little incident that triggered it off and it leaves it for the reader to maybe get their own brain going on it. Right, you need writing skills because no point writing my first novel and not getting it published. I sent it to a historian because it was about the Vietnam War and he said, you really need to do a course in study of the novel, and I thought, yes I do. So anyway, a lot of work. Often you get repeated rejections coming in all the time. For years you can expect rejections. You can even get them this stage of your life. And you have to have a really thick skin. I don't get many attacks on me, but I got one that's still up on the internet. Somebody read a story that got into a British paper, and he said that, she might think it's a good plot or something, but it's not poetry. Well, it was about what was going on in East Timor, and we'd had a speaker at one of my writers' meetings, and she was telling us about the Indonesian soldiers cutting off women's nipples so they couldn't feed their babies. It was delightful, and this fellow decided, excuse me, there's somebody out there I think wants to come in. Thanks, Janet. Okay. Technical skills, that's where, if you do a course, it is a really big help. If you can get a TAFE course in, Chris, who is going to be doing the second half of the program, she used to work as an editor at a TAFE. I did a TAFE course as a student when I left teaching, and that cuts out a lot of the trial and error you might have to do. And you have to constantly upgrade yourself. Okay, You need passion, you need commitment, you need energy, and you have to put yourself out there. I'm not the sort of person who really likes standing up here. The only reason I'm a bit comfortable here is because I know the venue and I know just about everybody coming in. Hello, Ruth. Hello, Danny. Okay. You need opportunities, and they don't always come your way. When they do, be ready for them, take advantage of them, and look for them. We'll get into that a bit later. Do courses and join groups of writers and critique groups. You have to network as a writer if you want to get published, because you learn so much from other people. I've had some marvellous talks. I was trying to think of the woman, Edel Wignall. She wrote something about bunyip. So I sat next to her on the tram coming home from one of our meetings once, and I learnt the most fabulous stuff from her. Okay. Editors like your work, I've said already, keep sending material. If you want to make a living, that's your problem. I was happy to make a half living, because Hartley was, in those days, the man did the breadwinning and the woman stayed home, looked after the kids. Well, I didn't. Our family came along pretty quickly, as they did in those days. I ended up going back half-time, but at the time I went back, I got offered a job on a local paper as a correspondent, and I thought, you know, am I going to be able to fit this in? Got 3 kids of primary school age, and anyway, I managed to fit it in, and that was a good thing that I didn't turn my back on that. Thanks, David. Professional development. Well, my first course was with the CAE journalism course with Patrick Tennyson, who used to be a broadcaster on 3OK and used to write for the Herald. He taught me a good story. He said the people who read The Age have got an average reading age of 12, and he wasn't being rude. He said, make what you write suit somebody like that. And I mean, I've taught 12-year-olds, and they're very cluey, very cluey. Okay, so that wasn't being rude, but it was telling me to write in simple language, because we used to get The Age, we used to get The Sun, I think, on Saturdays, whatever. So I was used to both styles, and they are different. Okay, I joined writers' groups. The Society of Women Writers Victoria, one of the women at the journalism course, she was the one of the founders, or the main founder of the group, and she just opened so many doors for me. The Australian Society of Authors Inc. That's as soon as I published my first book, I joined them. They're expensive to join. I think it's up to about $240 or something a year now. But I wanted to get a subsidised legal opinion on my book, and they've been helpful. Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. I went to some fabulous workshops with them. Fellowship of Australian Writers, which is now defunct. They were fantastic. They used to run award nights and things, and I used to meet really interesting top people like Chris Masters at those. Sat with Chris Masters, and he's still going strong. He's still one of our top journalists on the ABC. Oh, he could tell some stories. Attended all these talks and seminars. Diploma of Arts, now that's the one I was telling you about. That, if you're going to be a writer, I suggest you try and get into one of those courses. Then we took all advantages that I didn't really know what a brand was, but by the time I've been writing for about half a century, I finally realised I've got a style of my own, and it's this straightforward, simple style. It's not flowery. Okay, and all these things help build up your writers' network. Thanks, David. Now, this course, one of the beautiful things it did for me, if I can find this book. No, I don't think I can. But anyway, that's not, oh, here it is. One of the girls who'd done the course the year before, she said, get everybody in your class to give you a poem, put it together, make a book out of it. So I did that. Somebody in the group did the cover for me, and it happens to be a Banksia, which is one of our favourite flowers, and that was done at Chisholm Berwick, because that was the closest at the time. We didn't have the one down here at Wonthaggi. So that gave me fantastic experience at how to do that sort of thing. Okay, this was in 1999. Now, I ended up setting up my own publishing house, and that was because I had 2 broken contracts, and I called a business Ningen Publishing. And that's when I put out the second copy of that puzzle book I was telling you about. The fellow who bought this one, these were the two books. That was accepted by one place and this was accepted by another. And independently they were taken over by another publisher. And they didn't want to, one didn't want to do that sort of book and one didn't want to do puzzles. It wasn't their area. And the fellow who did this, he said, oh, that'd make a cheap book for him if he did that, so he did it. And that's his version. And because I didn't have a cover to it. And when he gave me, he said, I get the innards back, that's part of the contract. But he gave it to me at what they called photocopy ready, because I didn't have digital in those days. So I got all that for nothing, put it together. He gave me permission to use his cover. I went down to somebody in Druin, I think it was, who did the covers and the innards for me, and I sold 1,000 of those, and people, I think, would still be buying it because it's one of my best puzzle books. And then Lefty, the more copies you buy, get printed, I ended up getting 3,000. Took me ages to get them sold, but I had to promote it because it was my book. Sent one to nearly every library in Australia, I think, because it was too expensive to put in a stamped addressed envelope. It was cheaper for them to get rid of the book or else buy it from me, and a lot of them did buy it. And then I thought that should suit should suit TV children's shows. Sent it round to about 4 children's shows. One of them took it up. That was featured. They did a left-handed feature on telly. And they told me at the time that they would do they would somehow put the reading of this in with other things like standing in a thing, you put your right hand in, you put your left hand in. That was the sort of thing they were doing. So that was fine. They invited us to go there and they said, you wouldn't happen to have any grandchildren the age of these kids, would you? Because we could have them on the program. And I said, oh, well, I've got 2, 2 and 4, and they're the children of the kid I wrote that about. Oh, that'd be ideal. But of course I go and ask the mum of the kids, and she wasn't too happy, partly because they were Sydney and we found out the show was in Adelaide, so it made it a bit difficult. But we made the trip over, and when they took one look at Hartley and me, and they decided we looked all right apparently, and they said, would you like to be interviewed on the program and read it with one of the book with one of the presenters? As I say, grab the opportunity. So, oh dear, we better go on. I'll go on, come on please. Okay, that's the book. Okay, you've seen the book. That's our second book. This is Hartley hidden in the middle of that. When you do the cover yourself, you've got control. Okay, so that's mine. Opportunities won and lost, I've discussed some of these. They were going to do that travel book again as a paperback because it was doing very well. They sold their 6,000 copies. And Paul Keating decided we had to have a credit squeeze and the publisher couldn't afford it. If I knew what I know now, I would have offered to invest in it myself because we would have made money out of it because people were telling me it was their travel Bible. Okay, 2 contracts to publish, we know all that. Approached other publishers with books, I did that. Led to setting up, we've done all that. Promoted, yep. One thing, I could have made a lot more money as a teacher, a half-time teacher. I did make money from the educational books. I didn't make much money from anything else. I certainly didn't make anything from Broome Enigma, but mainly because they don't do any promoting. They say do your own promoting. I did what I could, which I thought was getting reviews. I'm all over the internet. I'm on 16 different countries. The book's for sale, it was taken up by a whole lot of people, but that doesn't translate to sales. And I am learning an awful lot from a group of writers that are published by Wild Rose Press, but they're spending $10,000 on stuff on a publicity person. I really am not prepared to spend that sort of money, but they pay editors as well as the editor who does it. And I spend about $30,000, I think, trying to promote their book. But anyway, so I lost my chance at being a teacher, but I'm not sorry because I've got this nice man I live with. He's our main breadwinner. And I made enough for us to get, well, if I hadn't have been working as a teacher and as this, we would never have got a holiday house at Coronet Bay. So I know one of the teachers I worked with, he had a book published and he said he built a swimming pool with it. And I thought, oh yeah, I shouldn't just let it get swallowed up. So I bought my first new car well, not the lot, I didn't cover the lot of it, but I got enough to make it worthwhile. Okay, that was with the teaching money, really, but I got a bit of book money. Okay, there are exceptions to people. I found out Valerie Parv, she's written more than 70 Mills and Boon and had over 34 million sales. Colleen McCulloch's Thornbirds, which most of you probably know, sold more than 30 million. And Bruce Courtney, he wrote Power of One. I hope you know. If you don't, read it or watch the movie. It sold 20 million copies of 21 books. And we had a speaker at one of my do's I went to, and she said if it wasn't for Bryce Courtney, Penguin wouldn't be doing what they're doing. I think his books carried about something like 90% of their operation, and all the other books they published they called marginal books, which meant that they covered costs. So that's how important a bestseller is even to a publisher. Don't quote me on the figures because I can't remember the exact figure, but it was a lot. Thank you, David. Are we at the end? I hope so. We're running out of time. Okay, that's me at the, that's the present, she read with me, took it in turns to read. I was reading the kid's part and she was reading somebody else. That's the musician, that's the other presenter. Hartley was very popular because he'd been a principal at Bass Valley School and he'd retired some years prior, but she was an ex-teacher and she was the producer and she just thought Hartley was lovely. It didn't worry about me. This was another teacher and she was the assistant producer, so Hartley was more popular than I was, I think. Anyway, this guy was the bookworm and he puts his arm up a worm and he does all sorts of things. It was a fabulous day because we walked into this set and you got the great tree that they have in it and all the books at the bookshop and all the rest of it. Yeah, next, thank you. I'm running out of time. Okay, opportunities won and lost. Oh, this was a funny one. I was invited to compile a puzzle book, a puzzle for an ad. I used to get published in these two flash magazines. They're children's magazines, cost a fortune. And one of them editors rang me up and she said, somebody wants you to do an ad, a puzzle for their chocolate ad. And me being very precious at the time said, oh, I couldn't encourage children to eat chocolate. So that was the end of that. Children's magazine, one of them, said McDonald's wanted to use one of my puzzles on a placemat. And I said, oh, good, how much did I get for that? How much will they pay for that? No, oh, you've already been paid for the puzzle, you don't get any more. So I sort of snorted and that was the end of that. And okay. Then the New York publisher offered to publish the novel, so I would have done anything she suggested for that. Except somebody said they invited her to add a sex scene. I really draw the line at some things that I will write, and I will not write steamy sex scenes, but I will write, what did I say she called it? Sexual tension. I can cope with a bit of sexual tension. Okay. Now, this was really tough. I've done a lot of work on that. I haven't been prepared to spend money. I am prepared to spend a little bit now because I know where to spend it, but it's taken me about 3 years and a lot of time to work out how to do it. Okay, contracts and legal opinions. As I regarded myself as a professional once I sold my first book, and I've always got a contract. But the one I got, when I say I get a legal opinion, you still have to do the legal work yourself. They say you're not allowed to send this to the publisher, so you have to rewrite it, and they always take about a fortnight before they give it to you, and you don't want to say too much to the publisher and lose the job. Anyway, it cost me $395 to get this highly subsidised legal opinion. and the woman did nothing. She said, we only have one contract and everybody gets the same one. The second crowd, who accepted 2 of my books, and I had the one legal opinion over both of them, and there were quite a few things that weren't too terrific with that one, like returning of rights and things like that. And it took so long to get to him. He'd given me the contract in a drop box, so I wrote and sent him 9 pages of comments about his stuff, and some of them really didn't mean much to me. I wasn't interested in buying a shirt with a photo of my book or cover on it or something, and I was only going to get 10% on every one of those or something, and my legal opinion said it should have been a lot higher. I shouldn't have even bothered to say that. But anyway, the next thing, I finally decided that I'm going to sign his contract, and he removed it. And I wrote to him and he said, I've been ill, I haven't been back to the office. Well, I've never heard from him except for him to try and flog the novels he is publishing by other people. Next, and you better yell out when I'm nearly at the end, I think, please, David. Challenges, you've got to learn all these technological skills. I've learned a lot, but I don't know how to make an e-book, and I should really do a course and find out. Breaking into the market's just about impossible, but I've got some figures somewhere. It's 11,000 books go up for sale in America every day. Huge numbers, huge. Coping with rejection, negative comments. I won't digress. Negotiating contracts, costs, you've got up for your computer, your printing, your shipping. You can't send stuff in handwriting anymore. You might have been when I started, but not now. Your promotion's terribly costly in time, effort, money, and it can be non-productive. I know people who've spent thousands of dollars and got nothing in return. I'm being asked at the moment for $800 American to pay an influencer that the publisher wants umpteen people of her Wild Rose Press people. She does it every year, but it doesn't translate into sales all the time. You've got to attract your readers, especially paying ones. Most people will take a copy of your book free, but they're not so happy to pay for it. Coping with algorithms. With this Wild Rose Press, I can't be told, but they go by how many books you've sold. Well, if you sell 100 in this generation, you're doing well. Well, as I say, I've sold thousands. I've sold 300,000 in all, roughly. I did count that up once, and it's roughly that. And if you sell 100, you're doing well. Some people only sell 2 or 3. This is with Amazon. And they only count the books that you don't buy through the Wild Rose Press. So that means because I've sold a lot to people individually, they don't count because I got a miserable 30% discount, and that's not enough for me to sell them to shops. I can't go to a shop because they want 25, 30, 40. And if you go to a distributor, they want 63% before you go through the door. If you go through Ashton Scholastic sold some of my lefties for me. I can't remember the figure, but it was something like 73% discount. And I told you that this book, I can't remember whether they offered it free for people becoming a member or whether they charged $2.50 for it. And it was a $25 or $26.95 book. And when you have those sort of discounts, you get just about nothing. Okay, and people pirate your books, and scammers write to you all the time offering you all sorts of, we'll put you on telly and we'll put you on the films and we'll do this and that, and then when you get to the bottom, they don't tell you the first letter. I don't bother answering them, but other people have told me they ask you for money. And sometimes they're marketers and they will do something, but it's not good enough. And you've got to be careful if you self-publish. Don't go with publishers, places like, I won't say it because I think this is going to be on telly. I think they're putting it up on their website. But if you're thinking of going with somebody to help you with your self-publishing, either have a quiet word with me first, so at least I can tell you some of the ones that aren't too terrific. AI, that's a big problem for writers at the moment. In America, there's been a big court case. The AI people think they have the right to just take your stuff for nothing, and then one of the top people in America his son said, "Look what I've just found, Dad," and he pushed some button and AI came up with 6 pages of writing almost identical to his father's writing. Now, is that stealing or is it fair use? And some other writer, she said that she sent her stuff off and they were told that it was AI and she'd pinched it from somebody. They'd pinched it herself. AI pinched her stuff. She'd written her own stuff and they said it was AI because it was like her own stuff. You know? Okay, that's my book and that's my people dropping off from church to the beach. Right, next please. Rewards, this is the last one I think, yes. Rewards from writing, monetary, you get royalties, payments, educational lending rights, which I get because my books are in educational libraries. Public lending rights, I used to get a fair bit for that, but they've taken it out of most writing and books now because it's 1987, I think. You satisfy yourself. Dr. Phil calls it your authentic self. Each of you is good at something. It might be cooking, it might be being a teacher, it might be whatever. But you have to do it, and if you do it, you feel good in yourself. If I'm on a holiday, I'm always writing letters to people or doing something. I'm always writing. It's just me. And you will have worked out yourself whether it's woodworking, growing plants or whatever. You get surprise feedback. If I had time, I would tell you lots of it, but I won't. But the one I will tell you is this one. We were coming home from a trip and we stopped off at Oyen to camp for the night. We went to a restaurant, cafe place to get takeaway fish and chips, and I'd been dropping off some of my puzzle books and this little book to some of the remote schools, mainly for First Nations people. And anyway, I had a few left and I said to a lady who served me, I said, "Oh, you wouldn't know anybody from the local primary school, would you?" And she said, "Oh, yes, I'm the president of the Mothers Club." I said, "Oh, you're perfect." I said, "Would you like some books for your school?" "Oh, I'd love it," she said. So while she's getting the fish and chips, I come back with the book. I handed that to her. She said, I knew you." She said, "I saw you on telly." And I said, "Oh, that was June the 1st or something." And she said, "No, it was August, only a few weeks ago. During, or whatever month it was, I can't remember when it was exactly, but it was during the school holidays. And she had sat with her kids and watched Channel 7 book plays, and it had been one of these 3 sessions, and I hadn't been told about. And then I sent a Christmas card with my Christmas newsletter, and I said to somebody about being on telly, and she wrote back and she said, "Oh yes, I saw you a couple of weeks ago." That was December, so I decided, yes, that done 3. Okay. And the meeting of other authors and interesting people. You have no idea who is in the Society of Women Writers, Women Writers Victoria. I've met some of the most beautiful people with them. I've got a friend, she's 105, and she went through the Holocaust. She escaped Poland. She was a refugee in Russia, and she writes about it. And she's still got the marbles up here. And she had her last book published last year, book of poetry. You know, and a couple of years before that, a novel. I mean, she might have written them some time ago and somebody encouraged her to get them published. But anyway, as long as you keep your marbles, and I still have enough of mine, it's a never-ending journey, and it's a job that continue into your old age. And this is the nice one. Doesn't happen very often, but occasionally you say, "I want to publish your book." Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'll hand over to...
I'll put this down. Okay. While we're just waiting for Chrissie Michaels. Oh, here she is. I just want to introduce Chrissie. I'll thank Meryl at the end of the whole session, I think, but that was just a fantastic insight into a writer's life, and the traps and the tips that she gave us were fantastic. So what I've got on you, Chrissie, because I don't know you, Chrissie is a prize-winning Wonthaggi writer. She's written 3 junior historical fiction novels. She won the inaugural Waterline writing competition, poems in numerous anthologies, the founding member of the Bass Coast Ibis Writers, and she's taught professional writing at the Box Hill TAFE. And her friendship with Meryl goes back 3 decades. So welcome and thank you for launching. You just have to put this on you. Hang on, let me try and do it. There we are.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to start by reading a review that I wrote of Unbreakable Bond for Meryl, which I notice has appeared in the book as well, so you'll be able to read it later on. But I'll read it to you now. Meryl Brown Tobin's latest anthology, Unbreakable Bond, published 2026 by Ningham Publishing, distinguishes her as a poet of stillness and patience. The collection is one of observational moments and simple acts of witness gathered over decades, where the eye moves over a scene and experience softly unfolds. Mostly minimising a rush to interpret, Meryl draws the reader into attention, capturing quiet spaces between noticing and naming. An egret shuffles amongst branches and leaves. A cormorant with its scurrying claws skims the ocean's surface and rises like a seaplane into the sky. The sun defines white gulls lining the water's edge. There are numerous gentle moments in nature where slight turns of attention mimic the breath of awareness, letting meaning and emotion gather in the margins. The title poem explores the tenderness and instinctive protectiveness between a father and his newborn son. The image of the baby's minute fingers wrapping around only half of his father's index finger emphasises both the child's fragility and the father's solidity. Their bond is described as fine as gossamer, strong as steel, suggesting that although the connection appears delicate, it possesses immense resilience. By calling it enduring beyond any worldly filament, this small physical touch becomes symbolic of something much greater. The poem elevates the simple gesture into a lasting link, one that affirms the enduring memory of familial love. Such precious moments and lasting memories shared between parent-child and grandparent-grandchild underpin the generational memory which accumulates through the collection. They are rendered with a clarity that feels unadorned but exact. Structurally, the poet's world is a compressed arrangement around environment, people, challenges, and reflection. Poems are compact, pared back. At times, what might appear confined to parochialism and surface details does not narrow perspective. The poems simply rely on ordinary actions and objects that carry meaning beneath the surface. Some readers may long for a sharper experience, but restraint is one of Meryl's poetic strengths. Conversational rhythms animate throughout and shape emotional impact. Line breaks, short pauses, give time for reflection. Meryl's language serves to envelop rather than decorate. There is a quiet power of small beginnings. A gardener looks up, open your hand. He takes seeds from his pocket. Plant these and you will have food for life. A simple physical gesture requiring readiness and trust, and a promise rooted in a natural cycle, show that what begins in something small can continue to nourish indefinitely. Later, we meet the gardener's mourning widow, gentle and reflective, but never bleak. She has the quiet dignity of old age. Her husband has passed, but he remains emotionally present in her memory and longing. Death is framed not as an ending, but as a reunion. In the latter sections of the anthology, there is an obvious shift to a more collective, transformative memory of social history, where the poet lays bare her ethical passions over a lifetime, not as abstract meditations, but grounded experiences, and sometimes as direct declarations. What resonates for me is her success in creating the space in which an experience is held, thus preserving the integrity of the moment. As a whole, the collection pays tribute to the ordinary, both private and communal. The everyday becomes charged because it is seen in unadorned fullness. The motifs linger like after-images, quiet, precise, and unexpectedly moving in their simplicity. The collection matters because it is a preservation of generational memory, social history, and an almost disappearing consciousness, the sense that something subtle is slipping away. In Unbreakable Bond, Meryl reminds us that depth and authenticity often lie with whom and what are closest to our heart. Ultimately, this is our texture, our ongoing sustenance, our life's continuity, an unbreakable bond. So Meryl's asked me also to read some poems, which I'm very happy to do, and I shall read just a selection of them. I'll start with the title poem of the anthology and Hartley's first choice. This is dedicated to Matt and Bailey. And we are on pink. I've colour-coded them. Unbreakable Bond. Only hours old, cocooned inside his father's hoodie, the tiny baby nestles against his father's bare chest and soaks in his body warmth. In dark pants and blue jacket, with matching doll-sized cap, the red-cheeked baby, eyes tight shut, mouth open, sleeps on. Minute fingers clasp half his father's index finger, father and son bonded by a link, fine as gossamer, strong as steel, enduring beyond any worldly filament. For Matt and Bailey. And now for some of these observational moments that Meryl loves to do in our natural world. And here we are. Haiku. Outback Queensland Day, heads bobbing in golden crop, wild bustards feeding. Outback Style. Periscope heads held high, bustards follow their leader through fields of grain, native grasses. They take off, long elegant necks outstretched, they dominate the sky. And morning after the storm. Snug in seagrass nest, flipper flopped over its head, a seal sleeps. Protected by luxuriant mangroves edging the beach, it wakes at a walker's approach. Rearing, it barks over and over at the interloper, bounces down to the mudflats, slops through mangroves, and dives into the sea. The next two poems I will read today summarise Meryl's passion in life to save our environment, and I hope that people take personal responsibility for caring for our natural world. Another of Hartley's choices, Chinese proverb. If planning for a year, plant rice. If planning for a decade, plant trees. If planning for a lifetime, educate people. Does such wisdom passed down over generations still apply today? Flirting with Extinction is the last poem in this collection. It is a declaration, a caution, and is dedicated to a late Coronet Bay resident who instigated the planting of mangroves to re-establish them where needed. He was also a member of Meryl's strength training group, the Lead Beta Lifters, who have their sessions here at the CDCC. So I think some of you are part of that group. Flirting with Extinction. We are animals, part of nature. Like moths to a flame, some ignore this and the need to live in a sustainable world. For nature to continue to provide clean air, soil, water, food, shelter, and biodiversity, we must manage our land to allow this. If not, the human race will die out. Then, with what is left, nature will do the best she can. And the final poem I will read today pays a light-hearted tribute to some enduring icons whose poetry and prose helped shape Australia's national identity. And this is called Remembering Aussie Icons, and it's yellow, my yellow tab. Right. Remembering Aussie Icons. I love Michaela's sunburnt country, her land of sweeping plains, her rugged mountain ranges, her droughts, her flooding rains. How can I attain the heights of early Aussie writing of renown? I want to emulate our icons, who wrote of many an up and down. I want to write like Banjo, of movement at the station, for word had got around, a gem for a young Oz nation. And don't forget our sweet Doreen and Bill, her sentimental bloke. Their courtship's a poignant reminder, not a sad or silly joke. Henry Lawson's drover's wife is testament to horror times, and as endured by women in the outback, and preserved in stories and in rhymes. When I reread stories of their feats, I go back many years and end up very quickly in laughter and in tears. Thank you. And now I have much pleasure in officially launching Unbreakable Bond by Meryl Tobin. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for reading those poems so beautifully.
Oh, thanks.
And it really showed me the diversity of them, how different they all are. I'm not a mad poetry person myself, but especially the last one really resonated with me. So thank you very much for doing the book launch. Now, Meryl, do you want to answer questions now, or would you prefer...
Before, I know Chris might have to rush off any time, so could I just give you some flowers?
Yes.
Although he is 35, let me say. I've left his sister in charge.
Ah.
I don't know if Pam wants to present
Oh,
them.
they're lovely. Thank you, Meryl. They're for you.
Thanks,
I'm the messenger.
Thank you. Thanks, Meryl.
Thank you, that was
And I'm
beautiful.
sorry
That
I
was beautiful.
can't stay, but it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
We love you.
Thank you. And I think Meryl, stay for a moment, because I think it's very apt for Matt and Bailey, is it? You're the people on the cover. Would you like to get up and stand on either side so we can get a photo? If you stand on...
You can see, this is them 16 years. Oh, you want to go on that side? This is Matt when he was a young father. He's my youngest grandson, Matthew. Oh, your eldest. My oldest, the oldest, really old. And Bailey is 16 years later. This is what you're getting.
That's so lovely. Yeah. Beautiful baby.
Before you go, while you're there, can I just say, the person who did all the work. And Maddie is the fourth one in the family. Would you mind standing up, Maddie? She came about 19 months after this one. 18 months after this one.
Okay, well, Meryl, that was just an outstanding presentation. Very authentic, showing your life experience and how you managed to fit your writing in, and the hurdles and the challenges, as well as some really good tips that I don't think you'd get anywhere else. So thank you very much for doing that. Tea and coffee.